Around 90% of advice out there about how to pack for Japan isn't about Japan at all. It's about Tokyo. And although these people might be well-meaning, they've usually only got a square inch of experience traveling the country. Things are different outside Tokyo. I know because I've travelled extensively in Japan over the past 10 years, and this is my actual list of 20 items I always take with me on all my trips. Starting off, it's the most common complaint I hear from travellers whenever I stop to chat. They're rarer than Fabergé eggs, hen's teeth, and reasons to visit Nagoya. That's right, rubbish bins are impossible to find if you've never heard of convenience stores and railway stations, and that's why it always pays to pack a plastic bag or 3 so you can bundle that trash up and keep it away from your other stuff. Bags are also super handy when it comes to doing laundry back at your accommodation. I mean, bundling everything up in your arms works, but nobody wants to find your underwear when you've dropped it in the elevator. You'll probably die of embarrassment. And on the topic of not popping your clogs, if you want to stay healthy on your trip, you're probably thinking I'm going to talk about vitamins and medicine next, but you'd be wrong. This item is multi-purpose because it's also mandatory equipment during the early summer months here. That's right, rainy season. You'll want to bring along a small umbrella. Now, why did I mention staying healthy? No, it's not because getting wet will give you a cold. That's what viruses do. And be sure to mention that to any Japanese person who argues otherwise. No, I want you to think about your skin, because this is also a UV blocking umbrella, which is extremely useful if you're like me and you don't want to keep applying sunscreen. Yes, this is Japan, and yes, men as well as women care about getting burned here. If you think it looks silly, come back and laugh at me when you're dying from skin cancer. Going back to the rain, I do sometimes swap the umbrella for this bunch it up raincoat, especially if I'm trying to keep my luggage as light as possible. If you forget to bring an umbrella, it's really easy to pick one up at a convenience store or at the Daiso once you're here. But this next one is a bit harder to replace. See, when I get to my hotel room and I find I've forgotten this item, I often feel like I want to cry, especially if I'm staying for a couple of days. Because the people who kit out accommodation these days generally only supply kid-size cups, and this is not okay. If I wanted to drink out of a thimble, I would have brought my own, which is why I suggest you bring a collapsible cup, just like this. Obviously, this is also handy when you want to extend your tea drinking time to the train you've got to catch in the morning and you feel like passing the ticket gates needs to be a little bit more challenging. If you feel like saving some resources, you can also take the cup with you to the next Apple embassy, but don't be surprised if the staff are really difficult and make a huge song and dance about it. Now, I've got a riddle for you. This is something people collect that they don't want, is valuable but weighs you down, but doesn't come with awful implications for your privacy. Give up? It's coins. You'll find out later why these are still very important to have on your trip, but for now, all you need to know is you need a place to keep them. Get yourself a coin purse and enjoy the high-end privacy, low-tech lifestyle while you're here. Meanwhile, back in the future, you've probably heard by now that short distance journeys on trains, buses and subways are more or less ticketless experiences nowadays, which isn't strictly true. You can still buy a ticket, but if you're doing lots of journeys, preloading cash onto an IC card like a Koka, Sugorika or Suica can save you from buying a ticket for every single hop. It's just a matter of tapping the ticket gate when you go in and out, and although actually you don't really need to physically tap, that's kind of nonsense, it's contactless technology. But you do need to keep on whipping that card out every time you use it, so you might want to do what a lot of commuters do here, which is put it in a special case on one of these retractable string thingies. Although, if you're doing longer distance journeys like using the Shinkansen or limited express trains, it's very likely that you'll have a small pass and reservation tickets. And you can't not tap with those things. You need to put them into the slot through the ticket gate. Now, since these things are card and not very strong and prone to disintegrate on contact with water, coffee, or I don't know, yogurt, you should take good care of them. And you can do this very easily as well as class up your trip by using one of these flashy business card cases as body armour for your passes and tickets. Just don't put any yogurt in there too. If you're coming here in the spring or the autumn, you might think that you're missing out on the awful summer experience that you get in Japan, with the exception of the very north in Aomori and Hokkaido. But while you're going to miss out on the high temperatures and humidity, one thing that you still need to think about is high levels of UV. That's right, even in the late winter, spring and autumn, it's possible to get burned, especially if you're outside for hours on end, and especially if you've got skin like mine. I've put a link to the UV forecast for Japan in the description because often weather apps don't include it. You'll be surprised how strong the sun can be outside the summer months, which is why I always remember to bring along sunscreen. Now, this next one is a bit surprising because it's actually a lot more common than you would think. When you go to a restaurant or cafe, you're often given a rolled up wet towel which you use for wiping your hands before you eat. In the winter, it's usually heated, which is very welcome when it's really cold outside. But what isn't welcome is when eateries don't have any napkins on the tables. It sounds unlikely, but it's actually very true. So plan ahead and keep a pack of napkins, tissues or wet wipes with you for those times when you spill ice cream on you. So after a busy day of sightseeing, one of the first things I want to do when I get back to my hotel room is to put my phone on charge. Okay, it's not just my phone, it's my power bank, my camera, and often my computer too. And with this entourage of gadgets all thirsty for juice, you're gonna end up with a queue. Now, not all hotel rooms have lots and lots of outlets, and you probably don't want to bring along a bunch of different cables and chargers too. So get yourself a multi-outlet power brick like this so you can charge most, if not all, of your electronics all at once. If you're coming to Japan in the autumn, winter or early spring, you'll probably find that the air's really dry, or your hotel room's really dry, or everywhere's really dry, except I hope of course it's not true at the bar as well. But anyway, heating here is mainly done using the same machines that condition the air, which is why you'll often find humidifiers inside hotel rooms. But that doesn't stop the air outside drinking your skin dry just like an invisible vampire, and that's why I always carry around some hand cream from about November to March. Now, in the second half of this packing list, if I forget to bring any of these things, you'll find me doing a double facepalm and sobbing my eyes out with only a cup of tea for consolation, or possibly heading to Daiso to get the thing that I forgot. This one's a bit meta because I might actually be at Daiso to buy the thing so I can buy other things and put them in the original thing. Don't worry if that doesn't make sense. I'm talking about a reusable shopping bag. You need to pay for plastic bags at convenience stores and shops and supermarkets. So people in Japan, most organised people in Japan, just stick one of these so-called eco bags in their other bag. When you're paying for things, staff commonly ask you if you want a plastic bag or what's it, Reggie Hookero. Anyway, the thing is, likely you won't catch what they're saying, so just keep that reusable bag in your hand so the staff know that you've got one and you don't need a plastic one, if that makes sense. Can just imagine the comments. Most of you like to get out and about and do a ton of sightseeing while you're here. Although I do see a fair few people in the comments saying they're gonna ride the Shinkansen all the way from Tokyo to Hokkaido. And now that's great because you won't need to worry about the smartphone in your hand running out of battery. There are outlets right there on the train. But if you're out and about or there's been an earthquake, you're going to need to get some electricity at some point. So that's why you need to bring a power bank, and don't forget to keep it charged. Remember, it's not just for convenience, it's also a safety thing. Now, although Japan has a great public transport system, if you're visiting from a car-based society, you might still be shocked about just how much you need to walk while you're here. What might look like short hops between subway stations and attractions soon add up into some serious kilo mileage, and that's why you should definitely get yourself kitted out with some proper comfy shoes before you leave home. Make sure you break them in before you get on the plane though, unless you want bleeding ankles. I should mention that if you've got reasonably large feet, say above men's size 9 for the US, US, it's nigh on impossible to find replacement shoes for you in stores. Usually you'll have to go online. And if your shoes are waterproof in some way, it's so much the better, because when it rains here, it really tips it down. And I should know, because I went to university in the wettest town in England. Now, you'll soon find out while you're here that there are plenty of places where you need to take off those shoes. The usual suspects are temples, castles, restaurants, and some cafes. And that's why a lot of people recommend getting slip-on shoes. But if you can't find this style in your size, or you don't like that kind of shoe, you can always make de-shoeing and shoeing much easier with these magnetic clips. Good shoes are only half of the equation though. I can't remember how many times I've gone out with friends to a cafe or restaurant and only found out when I got there that I needed to take my shoes off. Now I'm fine with that, but only if I've got good socks on. Ones with holes just won't cut it, especially if you're walking around the inside of a castle or temple. You're going to be there for like 10, 20, even 30 minutes. Plus, you might find your feet getting cold in the cooler months. And that's even before I remind you that you're probably going to be doing a lot more walking here than you imagine. So do yourself a favour and get some quality socks in your case. My personal favourites, and no, this isn't sponsored at all, it's just my personal recommendation, they're socks from Darn Tough. They're really comfortable to wear. They use merino wool, so it takes about a week to 10 days before they get smelly. And best of all, if I get holes in them and send them back, I get a free replacement pair. So they're kind of, well, socks for life. And it's great to have smell resistant socks, especially in the sweaty summer months. For all the hype that people commonly spread about Japan being really hygienic because of no handshaking, it breaks my brain that going to a bathroom and not finding soap is a regular occurrence. It just doesn't make any sense. As soon as you get outside the big cities, and sometimes even inside them, you're bound to notice this, but it's no good if you haven't got yourself prepared. I used to bring a little bottle of liquid soap with me, but now I've got this dinky little box full of paper soap, which is much lighter. And while we're on the subject of getting your hands clean at public bathrooms, there's another thing that's conspicuous by its absence, and that is paper towels and hand dryers. In the big cities now, you'll certainly find hand dryers in many bathrooms, but elsewhere it's often left up to you to provide your hand drying kit. And that's why most Japanese carry around these small hand towels every day. A word to the wise though, make sure you shake off the excess water from your hands before you start drying, unless you want to be carrying around a really damp towel all day. I'm not going to mince my words with this next one. You need cash. Even if you're in a big city, and even if you're planning on paying for everything by credit card or Suica, those things are not going to work when there's a big earthquake and the electricity goes out. If you want to buy something, you'll need cash, so always carry some with you. But even if there isn't an earthquake, temples, castles, some museums, and many restaurants and cafes will only accept cash. Don't assume that cards are always going to work. Always have some cash with you, because it's only a matter of time before you'll need it. A few pro tips here. If you ride the bus and try to use your Icoca or Suica card and you find you're out of money, you'll need to pay in cash. But usually they only accept 1,000 yen notes, so keep some of those around in case you need them. And with those luggage lockers I mentioned earlier, I didn't mention any luggage lockers. And when it comes to using luggage lockers, while you can use IC cards to pay for them in the bigger cities, in other areas you're still going to need cash, and specifically 100 yen coins. So keep a stash of those in that coin purse I told you to get earlier. Now, luggage lockers are a brilliant solution to doing some hands-free sightseeing, especially when you're arriving in a place many hours before your hotel's check-in time. But what about all those essential items that I've been mentioning that you need to carry with you? Well, you could stuff them in your pockets, but a less chaotic approach would be to bring a day bag. Don't make it too big and bulky if you can help it, because in crowded spots like on the subway, it's very easy to whack someone in the face. If you want a personal recommendation, and again, no, not sponsored, I just like their stuff, it's Tombin. The designs are top notch, the materials are very hard wearing, and I've found the bags great on rainy days, pretty waterproof. Anyway, give yourself a bit of room for the essentials and a little bit more for shopping, and you're all sorted. This is the penultimate item, and because of that, there's going to be a bit of a rant. I don't know what it is about hotels in Japan or hotels in general, but when the sole purpose of your business is to provide places for people to sleep, I don't understand how you can have curtains that let in light like a holy bucket lets out water. It's beyond belief. Anyway, for quality sleep you need proper dark, and I mean pitch black. If you don't believe me, read this book. If you want proper sleep and you happen to be travelling in Japan, you'll need a sleep mask because it's going to be way easier than convincing hotel owners to do their jobs properly. So the final item really can destroy your chances of having an enjoyable trip because it's actually extremely difficult to find it here. If you fail to bring this, you're probably going to be checking your armpits every 5 seconds to see if you stink, and the answer is yes, you probably do. So if you bring only one thing with you, make it your antiperspirant. A bit of explaining here: antiperspirant stops you sweating. Deodorant masks the bad smell with another smell. If you're here in any of the warmer months, you'll definitely need antiperspirant. Otherwise, you're going to be sweating out the water supply of a small African nation every hour. The trouble is, Japanese don't have the problem of smelly sweat, and they don't actually sweat all that much anyway. So it's hard to find an antiperspirant or deodorant here that will satisfy your needs. Sure, there are some available at drugstores and supermarkets, but it's a real hit and miss affair, and that's why you should always make sure you bring plenty with you. And that means a full container, not one with only 10% left. So now that you know exactly what to pack, let's get your itinerary into shape, because there are some really common mistakes that can leave you with dire consequences on your trip. So you'll want to watch this video to know what to do next. See ya! If you want proper sleep and happen to be travelling in Japan, you'll need sleep. Was it rolling? Tell me it was rolling.